So here's the second page of our balanced equation worksheet. We're going to, first of all, decide what our elements are. We have hydrogen, we have phosphorus, we have oxygen, and we have chlorine. And again, I didn't have to do this hydrogen again because I already have it written down. I just need the actual elements. Then I'm going to look at my subscripts and my coefficients. Okay, so looking at hydrogen, I have a subscript of 3. I don't have a coefficient, so it's just 3. For phosphorus, I don't have a subscript and I don't have a coefficient, so it's just 1. For oxygen, I have a subscript of 4 and no coefficient, so therefore oxygen is 4. Then on this side of the plus sign, I have a hydrogen with no subscript but a coefficient of 5. So I'm going to add that to this one because here's my addition sign right here to tell me to add, which gives me a total of 8 hydrogen. And then I have a chlorine. I have no subscript. Sorry, I have no subscript, so that's a 1, but I do have a 5 for a coefficient, so it's 5 chlorine because 5 times 1 is 5. Now I'm going to do the product side. I still have hydrogen, I still have phosphorus, I still have oxygen, and I still have chlorine. Looking at the hydrogens, I have 2 for my subscript, so that's 2 times my coefficient of 4, that gives me 8. For phosphorus, I don't have a subscript, so that's 1 times no coefficient, so it's still 1. For oxygen, I have no subscript, so that's 1, but I have a coefficient of 4 that goes to both of these, so that's 4. And for chlorine, I have a subscript of 5, no coefficient, so that is 5. And then I compare my numbers. I have 8 hydrogen and 8 hydrogen, 1 phosphorus and 1 phosphorus, 4 oxygen, 5 chlorines, 5 chlorine. Therefore, this equation would be balanced. Yes. Number 7. Again, we're going to do our elements first. I have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. On this side, I still have carbon, I still have hydrogen, and I still have oxygen. Then I'm going to go and find all of my subscripts, make myself aware, and my coefficients. Okay, so looking at carbon, there's only 1 here, so I have a 2 for a subscript, and I have a coefficient of 3, so 2 times 3 gives me 6. For hydrogen, I have 6 subscript and a coefficient of 3, because remember it's big, it goes to both of them. So 6 times 3 is 18. For oxygen, I have a subscript of 2 times my coefficient of 7 gives me 14. And then I go to the product side. For my carbon, first of all, we have our subscripts here and our coefficients. For carbon, I have no subscript, but I have a coefficient of 4, so therefore I have 4. For hydrogen, I have a subscript of 2 and a coefficient of 6. Therefore, I have 2 times 6 equals 12. And for oxygen, on this one I have no subscript, so it's 1, but I have a coefficient of 6, so that's 6. Plus, my sign right here, these oxygens, I have a subscript of 2 and a coefficient of 4, so it's 2 times 4 is 8. 6 plus 8 is 14. Remember, these go all the way across. And then I compare. I have 6 carbons here and only 4 carbon here, so we automatically know this equation is not balanced, so that would be a no. Okay, number 8. I have iron, hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. I have a subscript here and a subscript here. I have a coefficient here and a coefficient here. Remember, this coefficient only goes to this one because there's a plus sign separating it from the rest, and this coefficient goes to each one of these. There'll be 3 elements it goes to. And my subscripts only go to the one it's right behind. So looking at iron, I have no subscript, but I have a coefficient of 2, so I have 2 of those. Hydrogen, I have a subscript of 2 and a coefficient of 3, so 2 times 3 is 6. For sulfur, I have no subscript, so that's 1, but I have a coefficient of 3, so 1 times 3 is 3. Oxygen, I have a subscript of 4 and a coefficient of 3, so that's 4 times 3 is 12. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. I still have iron, I still have hydrogen, I still have sulfur, and I still have oxygen. Now this side throws in a parentheses, and that's new for us. That means that I first want to look at my subscripts. I have a 2 here, a 4 here, a 3 here, and a 2 here. Now, remember when we said that the subscripts are small and they only go towards the element that they're next to? That means this one is going to go to hydrogen, this one's going to go to iron, and this one is going to go to oxygen. But we have this little subscript on the outside of a parentheses. This subscript is for everything inside the parentheses. So this 3 is also going to go to oxygen, and it's going to go to sulfur. Okay? So let's look at iron first. I have a subscript of 2, no coefficient, so I have 2 for iron. For hydrogen, I have a subscript of 2 and a coefficient of 3, so that's going to be 6. For sulfur, I don't have a subscript inside, but I do have this subscript on the outside, so 3 times 1 is 3. And then for oxygen, I have a subscript right next to it, so that's 4. And then I have this one on the outside of the parentheses, so it's 4 times 3, which gives me 12. Then I compare. I have 2 irons here, 2 irons here, 6 hydrogens here, 6 hydrogens here, 3 sulfurs here, 3 sulfurs here, 12 oxygens here, and 12 oxygens here. So this one would be yes, it is balanced. And then looking at 9, we're going to look at our elements first. We have potassium, oxygen, hydrogen. I already have hydrogen. We have phosphorus, and I already have oxygen. We're going to have the same over here. Potassium, oxygen, hydrogen, and phosphorus. And then we're going to look at our subscripts. We have a 3 here and a 4 here. And then our coefficients, we have a 3 here. So remember, this coefficient is going to go to the potassium, to the oxygen, and the hydrogen. And it's going to stop there because there was a plus sign separating them. So for potassium, I have no subscript, but I have a coefficient of 3, so I have 3 potassium. For oxygen, on this side, I have a subscript of 1 and a coefficient of 3, so it's 1 times 3. That gives me 3. And then for hydrogen, we have no subscript, so it's 1 times 3. And then on this side, it's still part of the reaction. We have 3 hydrogens, no coefficient, so I'm going to add, because this right here tells me I'm going to add it to what I already came up with, so 3 plus 3, which gives me 6 total. Phosphorus, I have no subscript and no coefficient, so I have 1. And here's the oxygen again. I have a subscript of 4 and no coefficient, so that's 4. And remember, this tells me I'm going to add it to what I already had, so 3 plus 4 equals 7. And then on this side, my product side, for potassium, I have a subscript of 3, no coefficient, so I have 3. For oxygen, my first one, I have a 4 subscript, no coefficient, so that's 4. Let's go ahead and do this potassium. There's no subscript, there's 1, no coefficient, so there's still 1. Okay, let's do this side. We have a coefficient here. It's going to go to all of them, so it goes this way. We have a subscript here that only goes to my hydrogen. So for hydrogen, I have 2 times 3. It's going to give me 6. And then my oxygen, I have no subscript, but I have 3 coefficients. So 1 times 3 is 3. I'm going to add it to my 4 that I had here because of this right here. So 4 plus 3 equals 7. And then again, I compare both sides. I have 3 potassiums here, 3 potassiums here, 7 oxygen here, 7 oxygen here. 6 hydrogen here, 6 hydrogen here, 1 phosphorus here, and 1 phosphorus here. They are all equal, so yes, this equation is balanced. And the last one, we have boron, fluorine, lithium, sulfur, and oxygen. Again, on this side we have boron still. We still have fluorine. We still have lithium. We still have sulfur. And we still have oxygen. Next, we're going to look at our subscripts. I have all these subscripts. And I have one coefficient. For boron, I have no subscript, no coefficient, so there's one boron. For fluorine, I have a subscript of 3, no coefficient, so that's 3. For lithium, I have a subscript of 2, and I have a coefficient of 3, so it's 2 times 3 equals 6. For sulfur, I have no subscript, so that's 1, but I have a coefficient that goes to each one of these. So 3 times 1 is 3 sulfurs. And then for oxygen, I have 3 oxygens, and I have a coefficient of 3, so it's 3 times 3, which gives me 9 oxygens. And then I do the same on this side. I have a subscript of 2 borons and no coefficient, so that's 2. We had the parentheses again, so we'll have to look at that. For fluorine, I have no subscript, but I do have this coefficient out here in front, so it goes to both of these. So fluorine, 1 times 6 equals 6. For lithium, I have no subscript, so that would be 1, but I have this coefficient, so 1 times 6 is 6. For sulfur, it's inside this parentheses, and I have a subscript on the outside of it. Therefore, this one is multiplied by both of these. So 3 times 1 sulfur gives me 3 sulfurs. And then oxygen, I have a subscript of 3, and then I have a 3 subscript outside the parentheses, so it's 3 times 3 gives me 9 oxygens. And then I compare. I have 1 boron, 2 borons over here. We automatically know this is not balanced, so the answer would be no. And that's the end for this worksheet.